Hi guys, Martin from SOUND7 here. So we recently released a sound pack for trance, particularly centered around kind of deep trance and progressive trance styles. Very much what you'd hear similar on Anjuna Deep label, Anjuna Group Therapy, Above and Beyond Group Therapy, sorry, and from the styles of people like Marsh and Ben Bomer. So I just wanted to kind of run through that sound pack, give you some insight into the individual sounds and what we've got there, and quickly throw together and demonstrate how easy it is to get a really nice kind of full-bodied trance, progressive trance sound from some of the items we'll use from within the pack. Using Cubase today, there will be some external plugins in the way of effects, not synthesizers or anything, just effects. But anything we use can be replaced with anything in most DAWs, or naturally you may have your own kind of sets you want to use also. But not a requirement to get the sound we're looking for. Most of that will come from the sound pack itself. The effects will just be a bit of garnish and a bit of mixing, just to go through, make the sounds sit with each other better, and just to give it a bit of an edge. So let's crack on. So we've got the sound pack here and split into a few different folders. We've got bass hits, which are bass hits. We've got bass loops. We've got the chord hits. Chord loops. And there's some really nice organic sounds in a lot of the melody lines. The reason is because we use all analog gear. We're producing these sounds. It goes through an all analog processing chain as well. So there's nothing made in the box with any of these samples. They're all produced from analog hardware, recorded into the interface, RME interface and SSL interface. And also the effects applied are from hardware as well. So nothing comes from virtual synthesizers and nothing is coming from virtual effects. And just to be clear, there's nothing wrong with using that. It's just that for really deep, rich harmonic content, just utilizing the hardware, because that gives us the best results for that. Definitely occasions, in other sample packs or whatever, occasionally there is use of virtual aspects, but for the trance and the techno series we do, and all those electronic styles that rely on deep heavy set sounds, really just utilizing all of our hardware gear to get the best out of that. Moving on, we've got individual hits for drums, claps, hats, kicks, percussion and so forth. Drum loops. So split into sets, and you got drum loop set 1, drum loop set 2, and so on and so forth. So that will contain the full drum loop mixed, as you hear it there, and it will also have the breakout elements of each individual kind of track that made up that drum loop, so you can mix and match. Or for quicker instant results, or maybe during breakdowns or build-ups, you just want to utilize the full bit. Just for ease and accessibility, up to you, your flexibility. FX. Series of FX there, again, from all analog hardware, white noise, pink noise, so forth, resonance, sweeps, etc. We've got a load of music kits as well, which are fully integrated, complete music kits to kind of drop in, give you inspiration, get you going. Feel free to mash them up, use them as is, whatever you need. License supports all of that use. And the individual layers on each one that makes up the full music kit. So again, you know, you can drop in the straight full loops, or use the individual layers, or just use one layer, jump to another kit, use another layer, mix and match, drop into other, you know, sample packs alongside other sample packs you're using, alongside your own synth work, alongside your own samples, whatever you want. Pad loops. And finally, synth loops. And also to comment, all the excuse me, all the melodies, chord loops, music kick, etc. Come with the associated MIDI files, so you can drop these into your own synthesizers or route it out into your hardware synthesizers, so you can get kind of instant melodic results from any of the inspiration bits you hear in there. So it gives you more creativity, more flexibility to use the sounds or the melodies however you want. Okay, so let's start building something. Going to probably start with a kick, and my methods vary. You know, sometimes I start with melody, sometimes I start with a kick or bass, get the groove of the sound going. But I think let's just find a decent kick, drop that down. I think let's go with this one. Okay, laid that one down. Let's have a look, see what we've got in the bass. Let's drop a bass line in, give us the initial groove. I love that one. I think we'll drop that one in. Just going to loop that and bring the kick up to the same loop length. Nice. Really nice, kind of almost squelchy, reminiscent of a bit 303, almost elasticy kind of sound there. Yeah, good. Okay, so what was that? A minor there we got on that one. We're either going to drop into the chord loop or maybe look at some of the synth loops next. And I think then we'll build out the percussion a bit. So just for ease, I'm just going to look for something in A minor. This is interesting, this chord loop. Some of you guys may recognise is actually featured in Cellar Door by an Australian producer called Emus. Really big fan of that track. Incidentally, we were the originators of that chord loop there. So, you know, Emus was using that chord loop from our pack in his track, which is, you know, really flattering. And, you know, being a big fan of Emus as a producer, you know, that was really great to get that kind of level of support from such a great producer. It's a great chord loop. Bit of a clash here. Let's try the Emus one. Chord loop's not sitting with that. There we've got some quite heavy harmonic content in the bass loop there. Anyway, we could drop something in, trim it out, or maybe we'll just skip the synth loop, see what we can grab there from there. Now this is interesting. So, you know, both these sounds fit really well with what we've got already. This one, because of kind of how the melody is laid out, and it's less rushy sounding, you know, it's probably a bit more laid back, a bit more just bang on the chords kind of style. It contrasts nicely, I think, with the bass line, you know, which is very very on the beat sounding, on the rhythm, you know, quite progressive, very steady, tempo driven. So that one, that synth loop there, provides quite a nice contrast against that backdrop. And I think we could do something with that, maybe add some delay. Likewise, this one here actually kind of goes alongside the bass line quite nicely. It actually complements it quite well because it's a similar sort of sound, and often, you know, in electronic music production, it's actually the interplay of different elements, and you'll very much find that you'll have a collection of similar elements but also a contrast of other elements, and both interplaying with each other, and it's the contrast of those two that kind of present interest into the sound, into the track as a whole. Because sometimes, you know, you're fighting repetition and trying to avoid the sound becoming boring, because the beat 4/4 largely remains the same throughout, bar some slight variations. So it's reliant on the interplay of different elements, particularly in more minimal styles such as techno, melodic techno, dub techno, progressive house, progressive trance, where there's not that kind of rush and uplifting emotion of sound and that high energy output. It's a bit more subdued, a bit more laid back. So you've got to rely on different techniques to bring interest within the sound. And again, that comes from the contrast of different elements. Sounds at the back, sounds at the front, sounds lower in volume, sounds higher in volume, drier sounds, wetter sounds, slower sounds, faster sounds. All those things, you know, kind of work with each other to bring the interest into the track. And it may seem minor at the time, you know, this contrasting with that bass line, you know, because that's just two elements and it's quite a minor contrast. But actually, when you start stacking up sounds, you know, then they start summing up, and you've got that contrast interplay along many different tracks, and also kind of in subgroups as well. That's when you really start to build a track and you find your sound and your style. So let's drop this one in, keep dragging it, and I should just double click it. Bring the volume down a bit. I think I'll bring the bass down slightly. Okay, some heavy set sounds then. We're gonna work on the mix in a bit slightly, just to kind of allow it to sit better. When we're doing full mix down, obviously at this stage we're just at composition stage, but we definitely want those sounds to start sitting right to avoid fighting it down the line, you know, at the end stage. Okay, maybe a pad as well. See if we can get a pad in the back. That's almost a bit Doctor Who-y, actually, to be honest. Quite ethereal. Let's drop that one in. I'll delete that track there. Fubard. Okay, so instantly I'm thinking already I'm going to probably thin that pad out quite drastically, take the bottom out, just get the kind of mid-highs in there. I'm probably going to thin out the bottom end on this synth loop in a bit. So don't worry if it sounds quite heavy, quite clashy at the moment. We'll work on that. Let's just stick some drum sounds in there alongside as well, just to support that. Nice. snare. You know, the second snare is kind of just slightly offbeat, which again adds some interest, some variation there. Also helps to kind of drive the track along, the kind of push-pull effect. Lovely little shaker loop. Got that pad, that synth loop, that lovely bass line, and the kick. So let's actually start working with these elements now. I think we've got enough there just to build the foundations of a semi-decent track. So what I'm going to do, kick's very full, so I'm actually going to add a Transient Designer on that just to reduce that sustain amount slightly. There we are, you can hear the difference. And again, this is just an envelope shaper. Many DAWs come with these. Logic comes with one. I know Cubase got its own. It just takes the sustain and a bit of weight out of that kick because we've got a lot of heavy elements there anyway. We might just tap up the attack slightly. And you kind of think, well, actually, it's lost a bit of weight. It kind of, I don't know if it sounds as good. That's because we're hearing it in isolation. When we stick it back into the track, it's going to allow the other elements to breathe a bit more. So in isolation, you know, it might actually sound a bit worse, a bit lighter, but that's what we're actually going for because it will cut through the mix better and allow the other elements to sit better. And when you're doing, you know, mixing or even just, you know, tiny bits of mixing in the build-up stage, it's always good to, isolate your sound if you want to do the minute adjustments. You know, solo it, make some adjustments. Definitely go back to the full mix. Listen to how it sounds in the full mix. Make some adjustments whilst it's in the full mix, because ultimately that's where the element is going to be played. And it doesn't matter if it sounds crappy on its own. If it sounds good in the full mix, that's what we're aiming for. If you get to kind of breakdown parts where you've got a solo element and you're worried about the sound of that element on its own because it doesn't sound so good on its own, that's fine, because in breakdown parts you can automate the parameters back in. So maybe if we just had this kick running at the start, we'd want to fill out the sound of it, you know, go back to the original timbre of the sound with all that weight. Or we'd just, you know, automate these elements on the introduction, you know, on the build up. So we'd have the attack coming in slightly and sustain dropping out slightly as more elements are introduced. So you're not losing the energy in any part of the track, and you can work with that as well to slowly build the energy, bring the energy back back from a track as the build up increases, drop the energy, build the energy again, and then drop into the main. Okay, so let's crack on. Bassline, I'm going to add a bit of a filter on, not because I don't want to hear it there, but just because I think it gives us something to work with in, you know, in the arrangement. Later on, add a filter on that one. Annoyingly, Cubase doesn't come with just a simple filter. You know, like in Ableton Live, you've got auto filter, which is great. Logic, if I recall, it's got its own just filter, but Cubase, it's got like step filter, auto filter, a DJ filter, and none of them just offer frequency, high cut, low cut, whatever you're looking for, resonance, you know. Bit of an oversight there, I think, Steenberg, so get it sorted, guys. So we still want to hear it. Just kind of so it's rumbling away in the background, building, and you know what you can do when you're starting to build an arrangement is you can start to bring elements of that in, like thus. That pad's really singing, so I'm going to dial it back on the volume there. And funny, actually, you know, suddenly noticed how kind of prominent and loud that pad was, and maybe it wasn't so much when we dropped all the elements in originally, because we've just kind of shaved some timbre, some weight off that kick, we've put a filter over that bass line to cut out some of the higher harmonics. Suddenly the pad is, you know, a lot more prominent because it's now got the space to kind of shine and sing through, and your ears are picking up that element of it now. So we've had to reduce the volume of that. And, you know, final mix stage, we want to balance, listen to the levels, and rebalance the mix again afterwards. So, you know, no problem. This is all just the initial composition bit. Right, let's take some weight out of this. So you can see, you know, I can cut to about there before it really starts to have an effect on the timbre. Okay, so again, it's just about dropping a bit of low end out so everything sits a bit better. We can take quite a bit out of that one before we start hearing it. Go for a softer shelf. I think we really just like this section here, you know, that kind of mid-high, kind of ethereal delay bit. So I'm not too bothered if I cut into too much of the sound. It's just provide some nice support in the back. And I think what I'll do is I'll add a reverb onto that in a bit. I'm going to leave largely alone on the snare. I may just cut a bit out the really bottom. Snare, you want a bit of weight there, you know, it drives the track forward. It's quite a crucial element in terms of the drums. Right, so already we've built a really solid foundation, you know, and this is almost a track ready to go. You know, next stages would be, let's start arranging it out, let's start playing with some of the filters on the bass, maybe add some filters onto the other sounds as well, bring elements in, take elements out. But, you know, as you can hear, we've got a really solid foundation that already sounds proper good. So let's just add a bit of garnish here, and I think I'm going to add, I've already got a sub mix, an auxiliary send for the snare there, because I always put a reverb on the snare early doors just to give me a bit of a creative feel on the end result. So let's get that interaction. And on duty for reverb, it's just Valhalla's Room plugin there, which is a superb reverb. Right, we can hear that kicking in already. It's too much for me. So we're going to, firstly, whilst it's in the mix, we're going to dial back on the decay. So really dense room. Decay, and then just dial back on the scent. So it gives us some ambience, but it's not washing out the sound. Off. There we are. It makes it sit really nice. And I think we'll push the pad a bit more to the back by adding another reverb send, and that will be Valhalla. I think we'll do a room again. You could do vintage verb, but I think room will work here. So that's going to be full send straight away, so we'll hear that. Now there's already a bit of a reverb type effect on that pad from when it was recorded, because it went for the Roland Space Echo, which kind of gives a kind of dubby reverb delay sort of effect. We always apply it in a tasteful fashion, so not to wash out the sound or overwhelm the sound, it's just there present. So that's why it's already got that kind of ethereal sort of quality, bit of a reverb effect on it. but let's just take that a bit further to push it a bit more to the back, provide some more ambience to the overall track. I think we'll go for something like that. Push up the decay a bit. Bring the send down. Let's hear what it sounds like in the mix. It's still quite prominent, so I might cut out some lows even further. That's sitting better now. Again, down on the fader slightly. I think we'll add some more delay to that. Ping pong. Bit of feedback. Mix it wet because we've got it as a send, so we'll want the full wet really, and then we'll just control the wet dry for the send signal. I'm going to stick it to prime numbers only on delay, and what that does is it kind of it limits the kind of feedback lines that are running to focus on prime numbers only in terms of the algorithm behind the scenes. So delays can get quite washy, quite chaotic, and I find prime numbers section limits the potential for that. And you don't want too much delay. You want garnish, not the delay itself, to be singing through. Excuse me. Bit of high cut to filter it down, and a bit of low cut to take a bit of weight out of the actual delay. Some saturation maybe. I do like the Echoplex style. The tube tape, however, is quite good. Let's roll with that. It's a bit of saturation. And bring it down on the send. Drop it into the full mix. And maybe then, once we've got the full mix running, we may just want to push that signal up a bit or play around with it so it's sitting better in the full mix rather than just relying on what we heard in isolation. Okay. What I think I'm also going to do on that pad, so we've got the room there. I'm actually going to add a sidechain effect through Nicky Romero's by the Cableguys Kickstart plugin, and this gives the pumping effect, the kind of volume envelope effect, without having to feed sidechains into a compressor. So I use this quite often. Waves Pumper is another one that you can use, and I think there's Elfo Tool by the Extra guys who make Serum as well. So all really good to kind of drop on a track and get a kind of sidechain effect without messing around with sidechain feeding and maybe setting up a ghost track from your gig and all that kind of stuff. And I'm also going to replicate that on the pad itself. Let's put that on. Where are we? Now it's pretty much full blast on the reverb send, on the reverb bus, sorry. But on the pad itself, I'm going to dial it back because you don't want it to chop too much. You do want it to kind of pump slightly. And you may not hear it prominently in the overall mix, but you'll definitely feel it, and that's an important thing. And often, you won't hear a lot of the minute changes you do on each individual channel when you drop it back into the full mix. but what you will find is the sum of the parts will kind of make up for a fuller track. It'll also help you down the line when you're mixing, and also allow you a final far higher final limit as well, if that's what you're going for at the end result, because you've got much more headroom to play with at the mastering stage. So we just bypass. You just kind of hear it. It's offering a bit of sidechain effect. Now that pad's really not so prominent anymore, so we've done well to kind of bring that back and give that a bit of ambience in the back and allow it to sit in the back. Now what we find is if we mute that pad, you'll definitely hear the difference. You'll notice it gone. And drop it straight back in. Muted and back in. So there we are, it's gone from really prominent to something that actually sits in the back, and you kind of like, well, I don't know if I can hear it anymore, but mute it and the track definitely takes a different kind of tone and timbre without it now, so it's kind of integrated itself within the track, and that's what we're looking for when we're building the track. Let's bang a filter onto that simple loop there. Okay, so, you know, we've got the basic elements laid down now, and basically for, you know, if I was doing a longer series, what I'd be doing is I'd start breaking these out into individual arrangement pieces now and really just start working on the arrangement. In my eyes, there's nothing more I need to add right now for this track. I've got the core of it and it sounds good and it's exactly what I want. I think if I do a part 2 of this series, I'll show you guys how to break out into the arrangement and we'll take that further. But, you know, a kind of top tip from me is once you've got something that sounds good, don't sit there with it on loop for minutes and minutes and minutes. Maybe I could just change that a bit. Maybe I could just bring the bass in a bit more there. Maybe I should EQ a bit more there. I don't know if that snare sounds so good anymore. That shaker's really getting on my nerves. You'll start to get ear fatigue on hearing the same thing all the time, and sounds will start to sound boring. It sounded good just now. 10 minutes later on the same loop, listening to it on repetition, suddenly you hate all of it. So my advice is break out of that kind of chain really quickly, right? Get something that sounds good, get the initial elements sitting right, get happy with that, then break out into an arrangement straight away. Don't sit there tweaking that all day long because you'll quickly get fed up with it. And you've got to keep the creativity, you've got to keep the flow going. So next step, arrangement, build the arrangement. Then your inspiration is coming from the elements you bring in, you take away, you filter in, you filter down, you volume in, you volume out. The inspiration is going to be from those bits. You can start automating bits, delays, going out, reverbs, tailing off or coming back in. All those sorts of things will then start to drive you for inspiration. You know, so keep the flow going, guys. Don't get stuck in that kind of 4-bar loop, 8-bar loop, 16-bar loop. You've got to break out as quickly as possible. You may find, you know, once you start breaking out the arrangement, particularly when you get to the breakdown stage, you'll inevitably adding some additional points. We want some effects in there as well, some filter sweeps, some white noise perhaps, maybe some reverb kicks or drops, okay? And you'll find that as you start to build the arrangement, those things will come naturally, and it's like, okay, what's missing here? I've just broken down into the breakdown section. It feels a bit light. Okay, I need to stick a reverb kick in there, or some sort of sub drop or a filter sweep. Okay, so those things will come naturally as you're building the arrangement out. Don't think you need to get everything in right now. And actually, you may find when you've started building the arrangement, maybe some sounds sound a bit isolated, sound a bit thin on their own or whatever it is. And again, as I said earlier, you can play with automation to fix that, or you can bring some other elements that only sit in those parts of the track. So maybe I'll add additional hi-hats or percussion loops to fill out some areas on the build-up or the outro, whatever it is, you know. Again, just to reiterate, don't think you have to cram it all in here. Get something good going, break it out into arrangement, start working that way. And just as an example, you know, once we were breaking out arrangement, we could start having fun with the filter just on the bass and just on the synth line there. You know, we could be doing a bit of build up, bringing elements in, and we could be automating that filter parameter, or linking it to one of our hardware controls just to play it live and start recording those changes. Again, same for the synth line, bringing that in. Maybe you want to add some kind of kick variation, so I'm just going to drop that kick back 1 beat, so it kind of stops, drops back in, and the end of kind of the 8-bar loop there, I'm going to knock it back 2 beats, so this in action. Really adds to the rhythm. And it feels like I'd want a kind of cymbal crash there, actually just dropping in there just to reintroduce the kick back in, which would be great. And you may find actually you just want to tap back on some of the percussive elements as well, like the shaker, snare maybe. Snare could give you a couple if you tap back 2 beats on that. So again, let's listen to that from start. And again, crash there would sit really nice, kind of delaying out. And it's like, wow, you know, what we're doing here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 elements, you know, from that sample pack there. And already we've got the really solid fundamentals of a really serious track there. You know, we've held back on a couple bits to drive that tempo and that rhythm forwards, you know, add a bit of contrast, a bit of kind of, oh, I'm waiting for that next bit, and there it drops, you know, a bit of anticipation, which is important. We've added a couple minor effects for some garnish, we've thinned out some elements, and guys, you know, absolutely solid template for a track there, you know, ready to break out into arrangement and start filling out some more. So there we are, guys. Just wanted to give you a really good insight into, you know, what's contained with that sample pack, the results you can get if you just throw, you know, some really keen elements there. You've got the ability to mix and match so much from that sample pack. Drop them into your own productions. You know, you don't have to be creating full tracks from that sample pack. It can definitely support you with that, and it's definitely geared towards full tracks. But maybe you've got your own stuff going on. You're using sample packs from us or anyone else. You've got synth stuff from yourself or your existing tracks. You know, there's so much in that sample pack that you can use to drop into your existing tracks, as well as, you know, producing full tracks from as well. So hope that gives some insight, not only in terms of the samples themselves, but also, you know, just a bit of oversight and some basics on kind of electronic music production, particularly with trance and techno genres, in the interplay of things, and what actually starts to build a track and what's important with those kind of tracks, and how you can essentially, with just a few items, you know, play around with you know, some of the timings there, and play around with some of the filters. Already you can give you some really interesting creative results, and you can start having a lot of fun with that. So yeah, good stuff. Thanks for watching this, guys. Really, you know, good to get this done and have you with me. So great. Any questions, drop them in the comments below. Head over to a site if you want any more insight, or drop us an email. You know, really happy to speak to anyone and catch up with anyone about what's going on. Great. Thanks. See you next time, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.